Hey, what's up everybody? Video 44 coming at you another video. Alright, so I want to talk about some things that I heard in regards to the NBA, because I know that after the All-Star game fiasco yesterday, it was a lot that they had to really consider. And the one thing that I think, in listening to Carcino's content, even though sometimes he's not to be taken seriously, today I thought he had some nuggets on there that I thought was really important to consider when reflecting upon what we just watched. First thing I want to say is, why in the hell wasn't Bronny James and LeBron James part of the skills challenge? Did they not miss a massive opportunity there? I think they missed a massive opportunity to capitalize on some real hype and basically the most interesting storyline of the entire season going into the season was Bronny James and LeBron James playing on the Lakers together. And if that wasn't represented in the All-Star game, it's a little weird to me. Another thing, Steph Curry not being a part of the three-point contest. I didn't see the three-point contest, so I didn't realize he wasn't a part of it until somebody mentioned it. The game was in San Francisco. You trying to tell me Steph Curry, and from what I understand, the NBA came together, and a lot of the formatting of what we just saw was Steph Curry's brainchild. It was him and a few others coming together to try to reformat this All-Star game. You trying to tell me they had this game in his building? He's the greatest three-point shooter we've ever seen, and he wasn't a part of the three-point contest? And this could be one of his last All-Star games? That's just like another missed opportunity at great marketing. Ja Morant, not a part of the All-Star game festivities in any way. From what I understand, according to Carcino, it's the third most popular player in the NBA. Luka Doncic, not a part of the festivities in any way. One of the most popular players and obviously the most trending player in the entire league right now since he was traded to the Lakers, and having part of nothing. Like, I'm trying to figure out what were they focused on, because they obviously weren't focused on the things that would provide them the hype that would ultimately make this game worth watching. If I didn't know any better, I'd say somebody sabotaged some of this. Some of this looked like sabotage. Who in their right mind saw the formatting of this basketball game and thought it made sense to put 80 minutes of ad between the 3-hour program? 80 minutes of ads? 3-hour program? Like that, if I didn't know any better, when you look at all of that, what did that look like, a sabotage job to you? Doesn't it look like somebody was sabotaging it further? We talk about the first things that come to mind. They say, let's get all of those things out of this game. Anything that would otherwise remotely make it so that people in this era would be excited about this game. It's almost like they said, okay, we're going to skip those things. Let's figure out what those things are and deliberately leave those things out of this All-Star game. Like, I can't help but wonder if there's some sort of strange, beyond belief type of sabotage taking place in regards to that game. Because when you look at all the stuff that's so obvious, if you're in the business of making money, why are all the top draws of the modern moment not involved in this game? All of the most important stuff. No Giannis, no Bron, no Ja, no Luka. Obviously, AD's hurt. But, like, what just happened? Why weren't these people involved? And I just have to wonder. I really have to ask myself, what in the heck made it so that they felt that that was the way to go when they already having trouble with this program? And then this is the last year Turner's supposed to be hosting it. It's going to be shifting to NBC next year. And it's like, is this not some weird type of sabotage job? Am I not seeing hints of something deliberately gone wrong here? And I can tell y'all, man, ads. I complain about ad culture a lot, right? But this was like an exaggerated experience in regards to over bombardment with commercial ads. It's like an exaggerated experience. It's almost like you're satiring yourself when you put that much ads, that much commercials in between your program. I don't know. I mean, we talked about this yesterday, but I understand Adam Silver is in the business of making money. But if I didn't know any better, I'd say he was in the business of pushing people away based on what they were effectively able to accomplish with that program. You gotta be trying. Like, this is one of them situations where you like, How could so many things be neglected and go wrong at the same time without somebody actually thinking up a way to destroy the situation? Like, you can't stumble into this many mistakes. When you really break down all of what went wrong there, you can't stumble into this many mistakes. Having the game in Golden State and Steph Curry not shooting the ball, that's craziness. 80 minutes of ads and 40 minutes of basketball play, that is craziness. You got to be asking to destroy what you're doing, in my opinion. You obviously don't want it to succeed. And so that's what I took from that, man. I don't know, man. I have a hard time believing that people who professionally do things that are meant to draw people's attention aren't going to be just as effective in their intention of pushing people away. I can't imagine they wouldn't be able to know, okay, these are all the things we want to do if we want to put on a good game. Let's eliminate all of these things and do something else. You got to be trying to do that. I don't think that's something you stumble into. And so that's my point of view. I'm just a little confused by that. A little confused by what the NBA wants a brain like mine to think when you hear all of the stuff that they did not involve in this All-Star game, and you look at all the stuff they inserted into it, and then hear them talk about they want to improve ratings, improve in fan enthusiasm. Improve? Nah, that ain't the word. Destroy may be the word, but not improve. No, that's not what you're doing. So that's what comes to mind there. I just think that was, I don't know. I wouldn't be overly surprised at all to find out that was a sabotage job. Somebody didn't want that to work out. Because all the evidence is pointing toward it being, you have to think about how to ruin something the way they were able to effectively do so. I really believe it. Some things you stumble into, other things are like, well, damn, this wasn't on your think board as a means of, like, we didn't have this on a checklist board for which to neglect. Some of this stuff is like the LeBron James thing, that's the one that gives it away for me. Like, is there anything more obvious? Every time the Lakers, the most watched team in the NBA, goes to any arena, they're screaming at the end of that game that they want this kid to come in the game. And when I'm trying to figure out how to improve ratings, I'm not involving him in this situation when this is the first father-son duo to ever play in the NBA, and they're on the Lakers. And the year that they premiere that process, I neglect to involve them in the All-Star game at all. Yeah, you got to be trying to fix it. You got to try to not get that right. Literally, you got to be trying to not get that right. So yeah, and then I heard something that Carcino said I thought was also very interesting. He was essentially saying that, you know, that the way things are going, they want to control the media in such a way to where the people who have the NBA attached to their brand are going to be prohibited from saying certain things that don't promote the NBA in a positive light. And I gave it some thought, and I said, that's probably a slippery slope. They don't want to go that route. And I gave it some more thought, and I said, well, what they have to compete with is minds like mine who are going to tell the truth regardless. I'm going to tell you that the program is bad. So the people that they pay to promote the program probably should not echo that voice. You see what I'm saying? That actually makes more sense to me the more I thought about it. Now, if there was no voice speaking on the negativity organically in the ethos of the universe, then I would say they're trying to manipulate the narrative. But they can't control the narrative. So they need not speak into the narrative against their own interests. Makes all the sense in the world when you consider the environment they're in. And so it makes sense to me. I didn't like it initially, but it's like if that's the only voice, yeah, that's a problem. But if you're one of a trillion voices and everyone's listening to those other voices, then the voice that you put on should indeed be pro-you. Because 9 out of 10 voices are not. So in the context of that environment, yes, you should probably make sure that everybody who's representing you has good things to say about you. Because everybody who has bad things to say about you are all over the internet. They're everywhere. So a little critical thinking made me realize, I probably agree with that to a degree. But at the same time, to think that they're manipulating the point of view toward the masses, it's going to make them look campy when all of the people that are in the YouTube street, so to speak, are telling the truth. And then you turn to the people that represent the NBA and they're glazing and all of that. It's gonna seem weird. I would tell them that the logic is sound, but the execution of that potentially could be very, very ridiculous. Because what you're gonna find out is that people are gonna laugh at you guys for lying about your own mistakes, providing bad product. When they go to a casino or go to a Ticket TV or go to a BDF 44 and they telling the truth. You know what I mean? It's like, you may want to be careful about how much you're willing to forego the agreement that something may not be very good, when the overall sentiment may be that something is not very good. I think trying your best to silence those who properly criticize instead of improving the product so that their opinions can be aligned with positivity, I think could be potentially what ends up hurting them in this environment. People are going to want to see you say, yeah, this sucked. We're going to try to fix it, and we're going to fix it some more, and we're going to try to get it right. Not necessarily hearing your talking heads say that you got it right when you didn't. You know what I mean? In an environment where everybody's telling the truth, it's just going to be strange, man. That's what it really comes down to. It's going to be very strange. And so that's what I'm trying to get people to understand in the NBA circles that I see coming. Those who are trying to get ahead of this PR nightmare that is bad product being put on, and then trying to figure out how to control that narrative. I would just tell you, you can't control the narrative, but you can make yourself look crazy while the narrative is being displayed to the rest of us. And that is what you want to guard against. Making yourself look crazy out here. When every Tom, Dick, and Harry is saying, man, this is bad product, and then you got the people you hire sitting up here gritting their teeth saying how much they love something that they don't enjoy at all. It ain't. It's not gonna give what you think it's gonna give. And so that's what it really comes down to. I think they would do better allowing those who are organically frustrated by the product continue to bash the product as they see fit. Charles and EJ and those guys, they should be able to bash the product as they see fit. And it's not doing as much harm to the product as the product being bad is doing harm to the product. Let's just be real. You know, I heard something on Rory and Maul today that I thought was really interesting. I think Maul stumbled into an idea that I didn't think that was all that bad, to be honest with you. He said for the All-Star game, remove the three-point arc. I thought about it. I'm like, that could be damn cool. Because what ends up happening is they may shoot the ball from behind the arc, but it doesn't affect the score. You see what I'm saying? It's gonna put 2 points on the board instead of 3. So if they want to shoot them long shots, it ain't going to hit the same, and you don't end up with those exaggerated scores that you had last year in Indiana and before that. And it forces them to otherwise do things that ultimately will seem more competitive, because if the 3 doesn't count, then why take them? So you end up having players who are otherwise foregoing opportunities to play defense, at least doing more alley-oops, more dunks, more fadeaways and stuff like that. It's just more appealing to the eye. And maybe it translates to them being more competitive, but it certainly eats away at the notion that shooting the 3 makes any damn sense at all. And maybe it can cut down on some of that crap that we're watching where people are just taking long shots just to run the score up and keep themselves healthy. You remove that arc and it affects their gameplay in the All-Star game. I actually don't think it's the worst. Since you're trying all the rest of this stuff, I don't think that's the worst thing to try. Just for the All-Star game, I don't think it's the worst thing to try. I really don't. And that Dame and Steph can't shoot 50-footers and make any damn sense at all. I suddenly like the idea of what that looks like when this era is forced to eliminate the enhancement of the three-point shot, for which they overtake any damn way. Like the idea. And so, yeah, that's something I think, I don't know. I think Maul actually stumbled into something. I don't think that's a bad idea at all. So, yeah, that's something that was thought about this morning. And, yeah, man, I just think, my point of view is just get back to the traditional way of doing things, man. At least, even if it's bad product, it lines up historically. that's what you end up taking away from the game, is when you do all this different stuff, it takes away from how we can measure them against Mike, how we can measure them against the Magic and those guys that came before him. It cheats these guys out of historical ramifications, which is what also brings about the enthusiasm of the league. How does this die? Did he break a record? Well, if you remove that for which makes him able to break records, and I know that's contradictory given the fact that I just said to remove the three-point line, but if you take away that for which allows for them to break records, and you give an MVP trophy to a guy who scored 20 points in a game because the game only went up to 40, and it's 3 different games, it kind of becomes a situation where you're cheating the guys. You know, the minutes that the guys were given were based on whether or not they were able to win games to stay alive. And so it's like what you ended up having happen was your rookies ended up beating the team they were going up against, who had real, actual earned all-stars. And now the rookies are getting more minutes in the all-star festivities than actual all-stars. So that made for ridiculous product, to be honest with you. Really ridiculous. If you end up having like Dalton Knecht going up against Kevin Durant, like I don't go to the All-Star game to see. I don't want to see that at all at an All-Star game. And so I just think that when you consider the breakdown of the minutes, couple that with the breakdown of the difference between the ad time and the gameplay time, and you end up having even worse product on top of what was already not so great product. You know, back in 2020, I thought the format that they had was pretty cool. They did an honor to Kobe Bryant and kind of had the games going to 81 or something like that. I don't remember exactly how they did it, but that year that he passed away, right before the pandemic, I thought that All-Star format should have been revisited. Whatever they did in 2020, I would not be against them revisiting that format. I think that makes a lot of sense when considering how competitive that game was, ultimately how fun that game ultimately became. It had pockets at a time where it wasn't very competitive, but I think the majority of that game, if we go back and revisit it, it actually was a success. And so I think they should maybe consider revisiting that Kobe traditional memorial formatting, because I thought that was a very good All-Star game. That was a very good All-Star game. And I look back on it like, and I know they got away from it because pandemic shook everything up, and almost, I have to imagine people almost forgot how much of a success it actually was, given the fact the pandemic hit like a month later. But I remember how much I enjoyed that game. That was a very good game for the standards that we've been known to understand and accept from the All-Star game over the last 15 years. That was probably the best one I had seen in about 15 years up until that point, and ain't seen one any good since. So shout out to Kenny Meacham for reminding all of us on his platform 2020's All-Star game was damn good. Damn good. And that was what frustrated me. The following year, I was like, you guys didn't return to that format? I remember thinking that, like, yo, why don't we come back? Why didn't we go back to the Kobe format? That was fun. It made it competitive. And it's like everyone's forgotten that. I know the pandemic shook us loose, but we can't forget something that worked when we're trying to find solutions. So that's something that I think really needs to be studied. Go back, and all you think tank people, PR people, all you NBA people trying to figure out how to get the All-Star game right, go back and watch that game from start to finish and tell me that's not the best All-Star game we've had since Kobe Bryant retired. Like, yes, it was. Most definitely. And so that's something that I thought was very important. I legitimately enjoyed that game. I haven't enjoyed too many. So yeah, man. And next year it's supposed to be in Los Angeles, I believe, if they actually have it. I'm not sure they won't cancel it at this point, but I think it's a great chance they don't, just because of how much revenue they're actually able to garner, even with bad product. So I think it's probably a 99% chance we have an All-Star game next year. And from what I understand, it's going to be here at the Intuit Dome. I think it'll be pretty cool that they have it at the Intuit Dome, but if they can't figure out how to fix this product, then it ain't going to be the turnout that they're expecting. even though it's going to be in Los Angeles. You know, I firmly believe that some of the better all-star games have been in neutral markets or markets that have been small markets. Not always the best all-star games are in, LA or New York or whatever. Sometimes you just got to put on if you put on a good product, it ain't gonna really matter where it's at. That's the truth. It ain't gonna matter where it's at. As long as the product's good, people are gonna watch. And whatever city it is gonna draw them, all of those who can afford to go will go. But they had a real drag about this particular All-Star game. And I think what killed it for me is just finding out how much they screwed with the format. We got the youngsters playing against it, and it's a 3-game. I was like, whoa, I'm not interested in seeing that, to be honest with you. That's what ended up happening. I'm like, I want to see 4 quarters of basketball, 12 minutes of play. Now, whatever y'all figure out in that regard is good, but that format is what NBA basketball actually is. And when you start turning this into 3 different games, pickup games, you got young players and all this, I'm like, man, I don't find this to be an all-star game. I find this to be like some type of other type of thing. And it's not something I would particularly be interested in. So I really believe that being a traditionalist when it comes to this type of stuff holds so much weight because it gives people what they're expecting and it lines up against historical data for which these guys are measured against constantly. Who's the greatest of all time? Well, we sure as hell can't find out if they change the game so much it's not even the same game. And guys don't get the same opportunities to get those accolades, but those accolades determine whether or not we think this guy is the greatest. It's like, come on, man. Can we fix that? Stop. And I liken this, I use this analogy once in a while, but I liken it to the Tasmanian devil. When something goes wrong, all of a sudden he's spinning around making things worse. It's like, don't spin around on your head just because something went wrong. Sometimes you just gotta wait things out and don't do nothing at all. When you run around tearing up the house, spinning around, panicking, changing and rearranging the entire home because, a vase broke, it's like you're doing something crazy, making the situation significantly different, if not worse in a lot of cases. Worse in most cases. Someone drops a glass, all of a sudden you want to rearrange the whole house. It's like, nah, that's not necessary. How about we just get a broom, get a dustpan, sweep it up, grab about $20 and buy another vase. How about that? You know what I mean? There's no sense in acting like the Tasmanian devil when things happen to go wrong. Because what ends up happening is you end up ruining 8 things because you're upset about one thing. And that's what I think Adam Silver has done here. And the group of folks who are changing the All-Star game. That's exactly what I think they've done. It was already a bad product. You made it significantly worse. And it's compelling conversation on YouTube. But next year, I'm going to be less likely to be enthused about watching it unless you give me what I've been growing up watching. Give me what I've been growing up watching. I heard somebody say they want to do All-Stars versus or American versus international. That's what I understand. That could be really cool because some of the best players are international, but that's not sustainable necessarily because it's going to get lopsided one way or another eventually. Either going to have all international players in the future or it's going to be more American players in the future. But that parity that we have in this era, you don't want to count on that being the parity that you have every era. That's what I would caution the NBA. You don't want to count on that. And if you fall in love with that and you want that to be what it is from here on out, there are going to be some eras where that's not going to work. That's going to be just as lopsided as East versus West at some point. So for trying things, you could try it, but if you're trying it to not let it be sustainable, then you're signing up to try something new every year, just like they've been doing, which sucks. Like literally sucks. But what doesn't suck is knowing what I'm getting well before it happens. I think the NBA is underestimating how much we look forward, and I speak for myself, I can't say everybody, but how much we look forward to measuring things against the past. When a guy gets traded from the Eastern Conference to the Western Conference, you know one of the first things I used to think when I was a kid? Now I have so-and-so on the All-Star game. Or now we lost so-and-so, he's over there now. It's one of the first things I used to think when a star would get moved. When Shaq got traded to the Heat, I'm like, oh, the All-Star game is screwed. They got Shaq over there now. You see what I'm saying? When all we brought back was Lamar Odom, we're going to lose. But if you're going to screw with the format in such a way to where that doesn't even matter, for which they've been doing for the last 5 years, then it doesn't have that same effect on the kids. It doesn't have the same effect on myself as a grown person. Like, that was a big part of the draw toward the NBA, is anticipating what these teams are going to look like when certain players move coast. And so it's like when they're not in touch with the enthusiasm and what drives people to love the game, they start toying with stuff that brings people to the game. And that's where I think they might have lost. They may have been in this era trying to figure out how to fix something, acting like the Tasmanian devil, spinning around in circles, tearing up every damn thing. They didn't think about what draws people to the game and what has made it so that these diehard fans like myself have been watching for so long. We've been watching for so long because you provided a certain content that we could count on every year. Every year. And it's the essence of what brought us here in the first place in a lot of cases. Another thing that I noticed, the All-Star game, I saw some content, I don't remember who it was, so I can't give him credit, but he showed splices of the game that we just watched and then spliced that with like a random game in the 80s. And back and forth showed us 80s now, 80s now. And what you saw was not only players playing hard, but the rules allowing for them to do so. If you want to see effort in basketball, you can't be so protective of contact within the confines of the rules of the game. I understand you want to protect against injuries. Maybe there's another way to do that. But the physicality of the game often played into the enthusiasm of the energy on the floor. Because if a guy got his hand on my hip, now my ego is ruptured in a different way. As to where when he can't touch me, I may get a little frustrated because I'm getting cooked, but it ain't the same as somebody actually shoving me all game long, hand checking, impeding my progress to go left and right. Eventually, I'm gonna want to push through that person, and that's the effort right there. That's the enthusiasm of the competitive nature right there. It's in the physicality of the game. So while you're trying to protect the offensive player and keep from injuries, I definitely respect and think it works. It also brings about a certain passive nature to the competitive nature of the game itself. Half of the time, rivalries were built on fouls. People hit somebody real hard, somebody did something, and now these two people don't like one another because throughout the course of several games, contact was made, rupturing the ego, and thus making it so that people want to get back at people in a different, more personal kind of way. When you remove that contact from the game, you remove that ego-driven, I got to get back at them kind of thing. And so there's a thin line between allowing too much contact and creating opportunities for chaos and allowing for complete and utter passive basketball, for which we've been seeing in the All-Star game for the last several years. And when you start talking about the ramifications historically, or trying to measure these people against their predecessors, one of the biggest things that get in the way of modern basketball is the fact that contact has been removed from the game. And trying to compare these guys to the players of the past, it's nearly impossible. When you consider a great all-star from the past, numbers would be significantly more inflated if he didn't have to deal with a league full of hand checking and hard fouls. So when you couple that with what you see, it makes sense. These guys are shooting further away, and you can't touch them. So it makes for a not so competitive, driven product, if that makes any sense. So that's kind of like common sense, but I don't think it's been articulated too much when you consider the NBA and where we're at right now. If you ain't hitting the guy, don't expect the guy to get angry. And if a guy ain't getting angry, don't expect for him to be very enthused about competition. I definitely believe that physicality should be brought back into the league. Just like you had it in the 80s, I ain't going to say you should be as lenient about flagrant fouls, but hand checking should be returning. And certain things that just bring back the physicality of this basketball thing should be returning to the game. It should. If you really want to see people try hard, they have to be organically motivated to do so. And without contact, that's not coming. It's not coming. And so I don't know if to protect these players, you remove some of the games instead of removing some of the contact within those games. And that's something they don't want to do because, again, ad revenue. But if we're on the path of obscurity because of all the things that we're doing so that we can have more ad revenue, then again, it becomes, like I said yesterday, a money grab instead of sustainable product that can last the test of time. So, which is going to make you the most money in the long run? Obviously, having something that's going to stand the test of time. And right now, you're losing enthusiasm. The casual fan's not interested, and the diehard fan is frustrated. And so that's what I see there, man. I think they should be putting physicality back into the game. Don't be afraid of a little contact. Teach the new generation that is coming that it's not all about shooting threes and avoiding contact. That you're going to be touched, you're going to be pushed around, and maybe you're going to want to fight. And in doing so, you're going to play harder. And it's going to be incumbent upon you to discipline yourself down that thin line of being competitive and then just being bush league. And so that's what I think. The people above these kids' heads have made it so that they've grown into a softer game. I don't know that they wouldn't enjoy basketball even more if competition didn't allow for more physicality. A lot of these kids are only quote-unquote soft because they've been told that this is the way to play. This ain't the way to play. It's not the way they played in the 80s. And it was much more fun to watch. You want to bring back some product that's worth watching? Bring back the physicality of the basketball game. Allow them to hand check. Allow them to push a little more. I ain't saying swallow your whistles, just change the rules a little bit. But see, the problem is, and the NBA ain't gonna like me saying this, but I understand this, I figured this out. A lot of how they manipulate these games is by way of the whistle. They can control a lot of what happens in these outcomes with particular players in regards to their betting circumstances by sending guys to the line who are having cold nights. And that's been a pattern I've been pointing out all year long, and it's been a pattern I've been seeing for years. But it's especially consistent with players who are superstar players who are likely having their names betted on, who are expected to get 25 and 30 points, having 2 for 12 nights. You look at their free throws, and they're getting 11 for 11, 12 for 12. That's manipulatable. That right there is data of manipulation. Because when they see a player's cold, they send him to the line so he can get his numbers. I want the NBA to understand, and some of us are detecting that. We're seeing that that's happening. And we know that you are manipulating the game. We're making sure some of these guys get their numbers. And if they're having a hot night, they're probably not getting to the line that much too often. And they're having a cold night, they're there at the line all night long. See, Dan, and we've talked about how I think betting can really be what's ruining a lot of what's going on there, and it's inspiring a lot of what is ultimately taking the fun and the enthusiasm out of the game. It's so that they can leave stuff in the game that they can control. If they don't have the emphasis on betting, a lot of this isn't necessary. And so the NBA, it becomes, once again, a conversation about what's most important, making money today or keeping something that can make money forever. And we're crossing that line now. The NBA needs to respect that we're crossing that line. We're getting to a red space where all the things that you've done to make bucks have now made it so that people don't want to watch. So how do you get back to where you need to be in order so that people can be enthused about the game again? This is why you allow for certain things back into the game. You leave a little money on the table. And that's what I'm hoping that the NBA sees the fruit in doing before they ruin the league. Because that's exactly where this is headed, in my opinion, is a ruined league. If they keep this up for another 15, 20 years, there ain't going to be too many people watching. Not too many. And I can't be certain if the next generation of stars are going to be the same type of draw as the last generation of stars. It may be another 15, 20 years before you see a Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony-like era. You can't count on certain things, just like I said about the European versus American, or rather international versus American. You can't really count on that having parity like it has right now. You don't want to implement something that you plan on keeping in place that could tether, even if it works. And sustainability should be the word for that NBA, in my opinion. Sustainability, that's the urgency at this point. Adam Silver has ruined the league with his quick buck. Let's put betting back into the game nonsense. You gotta get all that out of the game so that people want to watch again, literally. And if they don't see the fruit in that, then it's all going to go down the toilet from here, man. And you can pay people to talk you up, but it's a new day. That doesn't work like it used to because there's too many people like me telling the truth. And you can't control our voices. And so you might as well give us good things to talk about rather than trying to drown us out with people that you pay to lie about how good they feel about the product that we're telling you is no good. BDO 44, and I thank you all for watching.